Hey guys, Mr. Milton here. Today we're looking at solving by completing the square. Notes. At the end of this video, you should be able to find the missing term that completes the perfect square trinomial, and you should be able to solve a quadratic by completing the square. So a little bit of review from our polynomials unit. Okay, they're asking us to simplify x plus 4 squared. Remember, to do that, I encourage you to just rewrite the problem and do it, whether you FOILed or box methoded. Okay, x times x was x squared. X times 4 was 4x. X times 4 is 4x. 4 times 4 is 16. All right, so we've got all those. And then added our like terms together. And so our final answer was x squared plus 8x plus 16. It's going to play an important role in today's lesson. Okay, why were we not allowed to use square roots to solve the function or the equation x squared plus 8x plus 16 equals 0? Remember, we talked about it at the end of the last video, is because there is a b value, or b term. Okay. Well, couldn't we write x squared plus 8x plus 16 as something else? We kind of just realized that, hey, we could write this as x plus 4 squared and mean the exact same thing. Okay. This trinomial is called a perfect square trinomial, because it can be written as a binomial squared. Okay, therefore, we now have x plus 4 squared equals 0. And now we can take the square root of both sides and solve for x. Okay, as we did that, we take the square root. We get x plus 4 equals 0. Solve, subtract 4 from both sides, and find x to be negative 4. Okay. All right. So, using that, we're going to see if we can solve some perfect square quadratics that have a b value. So if you look over here, we have x squared plus 6x plus 9 equals 36. Okay, remember we had the x box method. Okay, and so we're looking for two numbers that multiply to give us, because we're focusing on this left side, two numbers that multiply to give us 9 and add to give us 6. Those two numbers, 3 and 3. So we have x plus 3 times x plus 3 equals 36, rather than x plus 6x, or x squared plus 6x plus 9. Okay, which will be even better when we write it as x plus 3 squared equals 36. Okay, so now we have it set up. We've rewritten our left side so that we can take the square root. And so when we take the square root, our square term cancels out. We're left with x plus 3 equals, here's the tricky part, plus or minus 6. Remember, when we take the square root of a number, we have to think about the positive root and the negative root. And so we have two equations that we need to solve for. X plus 3 when it equals 6, and x plus 3 when it equals negative 6. Okay, we're splitting that into those two options here and solving for both of those. Okay, so as we solve that, subtract 3 from both sides, x equals 3, negative 6. Subtract 3 from both sides, x equals negative 9. So those are two answers, our two possibilities, our two solutions, two roots, two zeros, however you call them. Okay, number 2, we have x squared minus 10x plus 25. Again, we're looking for two numbers that multiply to give us 25 and add to give us negative 10. Those two numbers, negative 5 and negative 5. Okay, it works really nice because, well, they're the same numbers. Okay, that's what we're dealing with today, is perfect square trinomials. So as we go into it, try to find two numbers that multiply to give me negative, I did that, so x minus 5 squared. So I'm rewriting this left side, equals 9. So from there now, I'm taking the square root of both sides, and I'll get x minus 5, because that'll cancel out my square term on this side, equals plus or minus 3. And then I solve both possibilities. I solve for when x minus 5 equals 3, and I solve for when x minus 5 equals negative 3. Add 5 to both sides, x equals 8. Add 5 to both sides, x equals 2. All right, what happens when the trinomial is not a perfect square trinomial though? Okay, because these were really nice. These first 3 were perfect square trinomials, and so we can just kind of run into it. But what happens if it's not? We need to complete the square, and that's the name of these notes. Okay, complete the square. Basically, we need to make it a perfect square trinomial. If it's not a perfect square trinomial, we make it a perfect square trinomial. And this is how we do it. So it says, make x squared plus 12x minus 13 equals 0 into a perfect square trinomial. First, we want to move the 13 to the other side of the equal sign. Okay, because this isn't a perfect square. As we're looking at it, we're like, hey, what two numbers multiply to give us 13 and add to give us 12? And if we're thinking about that, we'd say, okay, well, I don't know, negative 1 and 13. Okay, not the same numbers, not a perfect square trinomial. Okay, so we move the 13 to the other side. Okay, now we need to figure out which number goes on the line to make this a perfect square trinomial. To figure this out, make my new x. Okay. We know we want to add to get 12. Okay. We need to think about which number adds to itself to get 12. And these numbers must be the same. That's the whole point of this, right? Then you have to square this number. Okay. So when we're looking at it, what number times this adds to itself to get 12? Well, you should think, hey, that's 6. All right, 6 plus 6 is 12. So since we're making up this number, what do we want this top number to be? Well, whatever 6 times 6 is. That's 36. Okay, so the number that goes on this line is 36. So we keep the b value, we move the c value, and change this number to what it needs to be. Okay, now we can't just add a random number to one side of the equal sign. Okay, to keep things balanced, you have to add that number to both sides. So if we're adding 36 to this side, we have to add 36 to both sides. Okay, then we simplify both sides. Okay, we can simplify this left side and write it as x plus 6 squared. That's why we did it. On the right side, 13 plus 36 is 49. Okay, take the square root of both sides. We get x plus 6 is plus or minus 7. Okay, now we solve for x, because x plus 6 could be 7, and x plus 6 is also negative 7. So solve, subtract 6 from both sides, x equals 1. Solve, subtract 6 from both sides, x equals negative 13. 1 and negative 13. Okay, so now let's do that with a few more problems here. Then look, 18 doesn't work out. So my first step is to get b by itself. So my first step is to get c on the other side. I'm left with x squared plus 18x plus, and I'm going to leave a blank here, equals, remember, I don't just pick it up and move it. I have to subtract 45 from both sides. Okay, it's not just picking up and moving. We have to subtract 45 from both sides. Now leave this space. Okay, as I make my x, or you can think of this as making your x, I like that because that's how we did factoring anyway. I know I need to add to get 19. What plus itself gives us 19? 9. Okay, and so 9 times 9 gives us what we want to put in the blank, and that's 81. That should be what completes our square. Okay, so x plus 9 squared, right? We already kind of figured out our factoring here, equals and that gives us 36. Negative 45 plus 81. Take the square root of both sides. X plus 9 equals plus or minus 6. And then I solve both of those. X plus 9 equals 6. X plus 9 equals negative 6. Subtract 9 from both sides. X equals negative 3. Subtract 9 from both sides. X equals negative 15. Negative 3 and negative 15. Okay, second problem here. Again, we want to move this C value first, plus 180. Okay, once we see it's not a perfect square trinomial, we move that C value and start. So I have x squared minus 24x. Now leave my space for my values. That's going to complete the square. Equals 180 plus, and I'll leave my space for the value that's going to complete the square. Negative 24. What plus what gives us negative 24? Negative 12. Negative 12 and negative 12. Okay, I'm kind of factoring the step before. Okay, and so negative 12 times negative 12 is 144. That is what fills our blank, or completes our square. And so we do that, we're moving to the next step. X minus 12 squared equals 324. Take the square root of both sides. X minus 12 equals, I don't know what that is, 16 maybe? Nope, can't be 16, 18. It is, it's 18, plus or minus 18. And so now I split it. X minus 12 equals 18. X minus 12 equals negative 18. Solve both of those. Add 12 to both sides. X equals 30. Okay, do that over here. Add 12 to both sides. X equals negative 6. All right, final one here. Make sure you're trying these out, giving a good effort on them. Okay, not a perfect square. Subtracting 104 from both sides here then. So I have x squared plus 20x plus, leaving a blank, equals negative 104 plus, leaving a blank. Okay, so as I search for that term to complete the square, something plus something equals 20. That's 10. Okay, if you notice, you can just divide this term by 2. Should give you what that's going to fill the blank here. Okay, 10 times 10 should be 100. Okay, so as we get into here, I have x squared plus 20x plus 100 equals this. I'm simplifying both sides. On the left side, I have x plus 10 squared, right? Because we factored already, equals negative 4. Okay, from here, notice this equals a negative number. Can we take the square root of a negative number? No, we can't. Okay, so at this point, make sure I did everything right, but I have no and solutions. It's plain, it's just no solutions. Okay, but that's why we can't take the square root of a negative number. So just like we had no solutions with graphing and no solutions with taking square roots, we have no solutions when we're completing the square. That's how it shows itself. Okay, here's your tips for success. Take your time to get the correct number that completes the square. Okay, if you don't have the correct number, you're not going to be able to do these problems correctly. Okay, don't forget to include the plus or minus when you take the square root of both sides. And then keep this sign with the appropriate number. Okay, I like to just separate it right away and write the problem twice. Okay, but make sure that you keep it with the appropriate number. Okay, that's it. That's completing our solving quadratics by completing the square. See ya.